for good, just to come back 3 months later. I just kind of like changing countries and relocating from now and then. Well, actually, I live like a digital nomad. I've been doing that for a couple of years now. But back then, when I moved to Australia, I was already abroad, so I was kind of moving from abroad to another foreign country. I was born in Central Eastern Europe. I moved to the Western Europe, for my studies, where I finished my master's degree. Built up a good career, and after a couple of years, I just felt, after visiting Australia 2 times, I just felt, oh wow, that's my country. Like I love it there. It's like California, just with Australian vibes. So I loved it. And so I quit my job, like really nicely paying, fancy job. I ended a relationship. I quit my lease, my flat, sold everything that I could, donated the rest, got my work and travel visa, and my plan was to work for 6 months and then travel 6 months, and in the first 6 months get an employer who I would work for. I was planning on working in an office because I was like a skilled worker. I know work and travel is mostly for picking veggies and fruits, which is great. I'm sure it's very relaxing. But I was applying for like, office jobs, and after the 6 months that I would work there, I wanted to get an employer to sponsor me and to keep me there. So I flew to Australia with a huge suitcase. I told my family, I'm probably gonna see you in a year or sometime in the future. You can visit me for sure. And also I told my friends, you can visit me. I have crazy friends. They came, they visited me already in the 2nd month in Australia. And so first 2 months I was traveling. I also went to New Zealand. Then I came back to Sydney and I started searching for flats. Just a very important fact that I should miss is I did all the quitting and the big decision in 2019. It was the end of the 2019. And I went to Australia in January 2020. And the first 2 months, as I said, I was traveling, enjoying, and started applying for jobs, for interviews, and searching for a flat for long term. Because I was planning to stay for at least a year and then ideally get a sponsorship. I was working in software and digital products, so that's I don't know how it is now. It used to be quite easy to get jobs in this field. Now with AI, not sure. And so I already had appointments fixed for apartment visits. I had invitations. I was invited to a couple of interviews in the exact same field that I used to work. And I was like, nice. This looks really good. This was a good decision. I love it. And as I said, it was 2020, and in February some news started popping up. There's a virus in Europe. I was like, oh, that's in Europe. It's not gonna jump over. I'm in Australia. And then there was a virus like pretty much everywhere, like all the news. And the Australian news started to get also very dramatic. We're like, oh, we got it here. People are dying. We are canceling all the flights. This is serious. This is pandemic. This is something the world hasn't seen before. And I freaked. I struggle with anxiety here and there, and back then my anxiety levels were through the roof, were crazy. So I was in my hotel room, preparing my Australian life and thinking, okay, is this serious? This is gonna pass. I'm sure this is gonna pass. And I noticed like how all tourists started leaving and flying out of the country because they were like canceling the flights. They're like, oh, that's fine, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna solve itself in a couple of weeks. I just try to stay calm, deal with my anxiety, it's okay. But then the lockdown came. It was somewhere in March, towards the end of March, I think. And at some point, the employees in the hotel, they started like checking like who's coming to the hotel, when you're going out, and because you shouldn't be on the streets unless you are shopping like grocery or so you need something from pharmacy. And so it started to feel really uncomfortable. And that last week of March that I spent in Sydney was the critical. I had to make a decision because if there were like one flight a day or two flights that were still flying, all other were cancelled, and the entire airport was like it felt like military. It was empty, and there were just like people queuing, and there was some military, and they were like, you have to queue here, don't go there, this is closed, this is closed. I remember being in Sydney in the park and looking in the sky, and I was seeing one airplane, and I was like, oh please, keep them flying, and I had to make a decision. Like, either I'm gonna stay here for the year as I planned, and if they cancel the flights and something happens back home in Europe with my parents or my grandmas or friends, I wouldn't be able to leave the country and just fly over and take care of them if they would get sick. And I felt very responsible for that, like for my family, kind of, my parents. And like, okay, if they cut all the flights, I'm stuck here, I can't help, I can't get out. So it's like, either I'm getting out now on the last flights, or I'm staying for the entire year and I can't go if anything happens. And I decided to leave. And that plane that I was on, it was pretty much like one of the last flights that flew out. And like 2 or 3 days after I left the country, that route got also cancelled and you couldn't get out. That was it. And it wasn't a year that I would be stuck there. It was longer. Like the entire flights, all the connections, everything was cancelled for, I think it was over 2 years. Like for 2 years, people struggled to get out and back to the country. Like Australia was like one big prison. Sorry to say if you're from Australia, but yeah, probably get it. So at the end, I was happy that I got out. I flew back into the lockdown in Europe, but at least I was able to visit my family. So that's how I had to abandon my Australian dream. At least for now. Or then. I think I'm not done with Australia. I'm coming. But there's always something good, even in such situations when your dream bursts, dissolves itself into thin air. So I flew back on one of the last planes, one of the last flights to Europe into a very strict lockdown. It means I had no apartment, I had no job, and well, of course, I had no boyfriend, but I was lucky. I had still many friends back home. Um, so I ended up sleeping on a friend's couch for a couple of months in the lockdown. And since I didn't want to go back to office, because that decision of not going back, that was quite fine for me. It was either going back to office in Australia just to have sponsorship and visa, and then later on to become self-employed. So it was either that in Australia or it was the self-employment journey in Europe. So I founded a company. I was locked down. I would be bored. There was nothing to do. I was like, I'm not gonna watch Netflix for the coming months. I'm not gonna waste my time on, I don't know, social media. It's not always a waste of time, many times. Or do something pointless. So I started a company. I used the time to write a book. I was actually pretty down, you can imagine. If you give up everything for something that you've been dreaming about, and then it doesn't work out, and you have no influence over it whatsoever, then it's quite devastating. So apart from my anxiety that I struggled with since I found myself in lockdown in a foreign country on the other side of the world in Australia, I brought that back to lockdown. I felt really down. I felt pretty down. It was like nothing works. I give everything up for something, and there's no outcome. There's nothing. I'm left with nothing. I'm sleeping on my friend's couch. I have no plan. I have no idea what to do. And so yeah, I found a company, and it started with me writing a book, because I was researching topics about mental health, like how to deal with anxiety, how to be more positive, how to have positive vibes, not let yourself slide into depression. And I was reading mostly scientific papers, or like popular science, I would say. It was really like hard science where you have just numbers and statistics. Psychology is quite digestible, I would say. So I was reading that, and it was helping me. And then I was thinking, okay, so just to internalize it and just not to forget it, I might also write down all the findings that I got from the papers. And so I wrote a book. It became a book that I wrote during the lockdown. And since I had a book and I wanted to start a business, I started a publishing business and I published my book. And after that I published many other books. And that pretty much became my first self-employed, my first entrepreneurial project, my first business. So since there's always something good, even if something else is falling apart, we usually see it after a certain amount of time when the sky clears. Yeah, so that was my first business that is mostly passive. And a couple of years later, when there was no pandemic anymore, it was 2022, it was already relaxing. Like the restrictions were being relaxed. I met my partner and we started another business venture, which is also mostly passive. So that allows us to travel most of the time, visit different places. Pretty much every 1 or 2 months we are in a different place. different Airbnb. Right now I'm filming from an Airbnb in San Martin in Caribbean, French part, so pretty much in Europe politically, or European Union. From here we're going to Dominican Republic, and then to Peru and Colombia and to Mexico. And all this wouldn't be the case if I would have stayed in Australia. I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I would get the job that I was applying for and would be happily employed and living in Sydney, probably having a different partner. Like, life is so unpredictable, and it's all the small decisions that decide how the story evolves. If you enjoyed the video, please like it and subscribe for more. Thank you.